1. The roommate who never existed. The haunting at Ohio State University. Whispers from the library basement. The dark secret of Boston College. 3. The midnight caller. The unsolved mystery at UCLA dorms. 1. The roommate who never existed. The haunting at Ohio State University. It all started in the fall semester of 2013, when Emily Carter, a freshman at Ohio State University, moved into her dorm room on the 3rd floor of Lincoln Hall. She was nervous yet excited about beginning college life. Her assigned roommate, according to the university records, was a girl named Sarah Mills. When Emily arrived, she found one side of the room already set up, neatly folded blankets, a small lamp glowing on the desk, a few books stacked in perfect order, and even a photo frame facing downward. Assuming Sarah had arrived earlier and gone out to explore, Emily unpacked her things, feeling relieved that her roommate seemed tidy and organized. That night, however, when Emily returned from orientation, she noticed something odd. The air in the room felt heavier, colder than the rest of the hall. She brushed it off as nerves and went to bed. Around 2 a.m., she woke up to a faint rustling sound, the kind of soft, deliberate movement that comes from someone shifting in their sleep. She turned over and whispered, "Sarah," but no one replied. Still, she could swear she heard steady breathing from the other bed. The next morning, when she got up, the bed across from her was perfectly made, the same way it was the day before, not a wrinkle out of place. During the first week, Emily barely saw her roommate. She'd leave for classes in the morning, come back at night, and everything in Sarah's corner would seem slightly rearranged, like the lamp facing a different direction, or the books shuffled. It didn't seem like much, but it gave Emily a strange feeling, one that she couldn't shake. She finally decided to ask the resident advisor, RA, about Sarah's schedule, thinking maybe they were just missing each other. The RA frowned and said, "Sarah Mills? Are you sure about the name? Let me check." A few minutes later, he came back looking confused. "There's no one by that name assigned to this dorm anymore," he said slowly. Emily laughed awkwardly, assuming it was a mix-up. But that night, when she returned to her room, the photo frame on Sarah's desk was turned upright for the first time, and in the dim light she saw the image clearly. It was an old faded picture of a girl smiling faintly, standing in front of Lincoln Hall. The date scribbled on the bottom corner read, October 1998. The girl's name, written neatly on the back of the frame, was Sarah Mills. From that night on, strange things began happening more often. Emily would wake to whispering sounds just before dawn, faint but unmistakable, coming from the corner of the room where Sarah's bed stood. The air would turn icy cold, and her breath would fog in front of her face. Once she swore she saw the silhouette of someone sitting on the edge of that bed, her long hair hanging down, motionless. But when she turned on the light, the bed was empty. Emily told her friends, but they brushed it off as stress or lack of sleep. She tried to convince herself they were right until one night she heard crying. It was soft at first, like someone trying to hold it in, but it grew louder, turning into heartbreaking sobs that filled the tiny room. Emily froze under her blanket, too scared to move. When the sound finally stopped, she gathered the courage to whisper, "Sarah?" The silence that followed was worse than any sound could have been. The next day she went to the campus library and dug into old records of Lincoln Hall. What she found made her stomach twist. In 1998, a student named Sarah Mills had indeed lived in that same dorm room. According to the archived newspaper clipping, she was a freshman who died by suicide in her room after weeks of isolation and bullying. The reports mentioned that her roommate at the time had moved out just days before her death, complaining about hearing whispers at night. Emily's hand shook as she read the details. The same bed, the same room, even the same floor. The article said the room was closed for a few years afterward, renovated, and reopened in 2005. No one had reported anything strange since, but Emily couldn't ignore what she was experiencing. That night, she returned to her room determined to confront whatever was happening. She spoke out loud, her voice trembling. "Sarah, if you're here, I'm not your enemy. Please tell me what you want." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the lamp on Sarah's desk flickered violently, and the photo frame slid across the table, crashing to the floor. Emily screamed and ran out, her heart pounding. When she came back later with her RA and 2 friends, everything looked normal again except the photo frame was gone. No one could find it, not even under the furniture. Over the next few days, Emily avoided staying in her room after sunset. She'd study late at the library or crash on a friend's couch, but every time she came back in the morning, she'd find her things move slightly like someone had been there during the night. Her roommate corner looked more disturbed each time. The blanket rumpled, the books scattered, and the desk lamp turned toward Emily's bed. Then one morning she found something that made her blood run cold. On her pillow was a small note written in shaky handwriting, "Please don't leave me again." Emily moved out that same day. After she left, the university sealed that room for maintenance, though everyone knew it wasn't plumbing or paint that needed fixing. Rumors spread quickly. Some said the next semester's students heard faint crying from behind the locked door. Others swore they saw the light flicker inside even when the power was out. To this day, Lincoln Hall's third floor remains a place freshmen talk about in hushed voices. And if you ask around campus late at night, someone will tell you about the girl who had a roommate that didn't exist, but couldn't be forgotten. For Whispers from the Library Basement, The Dark Secret of Boston College. It was the fall of 2009 when Michael Turner, a senior at Boston College, got a work-study job in the university's O'Neill Library. He didn't mind the quiet atmosphere or the dusty old shelves. He actually preferred them. It was easy money, shelving books, checking returns, and occasionally helping lost freshmen find their way through the endless rows of literature. But there was one place in the library he didn't like: the basement. It wasn't part of his usual route, but every now and then his supervisor would ask him to run down there to fetch old records or archives. The first time he went, he noticed how different it felt from the rest of the building. The air was cold and thick, carrying the faint smell of mildew and something else, something metallic like rust or blood. The lights buzzed weakly overhead, flickering just enough to make shadows crawl along the walls. It was easy to feel like someone was standing right behind you down there, even when you were completely alone. One night after the library had closed, Michael was finishing up some late cataloging work when his supervisor, Mr. Harris, tossed him a key and said, "We need the 1972 faculty files. They're in the basement archives, room B12. Grab them before you clock out." Michael sighed but nodded. He took the key and headed down the narrow stairwell, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The deeper he went, the colder it became. When he reached the basement door, he noticed something strange. It was already slightly open. He pushed it gently and the hinges let out a long, low creak that made his skin crawl. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, leaving long stretches of darkness between the glowing sections. He walked past old filing cabinets, forgotten microfilm machines, and rows of ancient books with cracked spines. As he moved farther in, he started to hear a faint sound, almost like a whisper. At first he thought it was the hum of the lights or air ducts, but as he stood still, the sound grew clearer. It wasn't random, it was a voice. It was soft, like someone murmuring just below hearing level, the words indistinct but rhythmic, like a chant. Michael froze, his breath catching. "Hello," he called out, his voice trembling slightly. No answer. He told himself it was probably someone else working late, maybe a janitor or another student employee. But as he continued down the aisle toward room B12, the whispers followed him. They seemed to drift closer, circling him, rising and falling in volume as if moving through the air itself. When he finally found the file room, he yanked the door open, grabbed the box he needed, and turned to leave. But the door slammed shut behind him with a violent bang. His heart jumped to his throat. He tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. Locked. He banged on the door, shouting for help, but the thick wall swallowed his voice. Then came the whisper again, this time unmistakably close, right next to his ear. "Don't leave me." Michael spun around, dropping the box. Papers scattered across the floor, fluttering like pale leaves. In the corner of the room he saw something, a shape, hunched and faintly glowing like a person crouching in the shadows. It was only there for a second before the light flickered and it was gone. Michael didn't sleep that night. He convinced himself it had been a trick of the light, exhaustion, or maybe even carbon monoxide from the old ventilation. But deep down he knew what he'd heard. The next morning he told Mr. Harris, who laughed it off and said, "Oh, you must have met our basement ghost. Every few years someone claims to hear it." Then, as if realizing he'd said too much, he changed the subject and told Michael to avoid the basement unless absolutely necessary. That warning only made Michael more curious. Over the next few days he started asking around. Most people just shrugged, saying the basement had always felt creepy. But one librarian, an older woman named Mrs. Keating, leaned in close and whispered, "They say it's the spirit of a student who disappeared in 1972. She worked the archives, just like you." Michael's stomach dropped. He remembered the label on the files he'd fetched that night, 1972 faculty records. "What happened to her?" he asked quietly. Mrs. Keating sighed. "Her name was Ellen Brooks. One night she stayed late to finish her shift. She never came home. The police searched everywhere but found nothing, except her glasses, down in that basement." Michael tried to shake off the story, but he couldn't. Every time he passed the stairwell leading down to the basement, he felt a chill crawl up his neck. One evening, he noticed something strange. The basement lights were on even though the building was closing. He hesitated, then curiosity got the better of him. He walked down, his phone flashlight trembling in his hand. As he reached the bottom, he heard it again. The same whispering, soft and slow, like someone breathing words through the dark. "Help me." His heart pounded as he turned the corner toward room B12. The door was ajar just as before. He peeked inside. There in the middle of the room was a faint figure of a young woman, her hair long and tangled, her clothes faintly old-fashioned. Her head was bowed, and her hand reached out as if searching for something. Michael froze, every instinct screaming to run, but his feet wouldn't move.
"Ellen?"
he whispered without realizing it. The figure looked up slowly, and though her face was blurred by the dim light, he could see her eyes, wide, hollow, and filled with sadness. She mouthed something he couldn't hear, and then the lights blinked out completely. When they flickered back on a second later, she was gone. The air felt normal again, and the room was empty. Michael stumbled out, gasping for air, his chest tight. He ran up the stairs and didn't stop until he was outside, gulping the cold night air. He quit his job the next morning. Weeks later, out of sheer curiosity, he returned to the library during the day. The basement door was sealed off with a maintenance do not enter sign. When he asked a janitor about it, the man said, "Some kid reported weird noises again last month. They're finally planning to renovate down there. About time." Years later, long after Michael had graduated, he came back to visit the campus. The O'Neill Library looked the same, except the basement had been converted into a study lounge. He wandered down to see it, half hoping to feel that same chill again. It looked ordinary now, bright lights, polished floors, a few students studying quietly. But as he turned to leave, he noticed a framed black and white photo hanging near the elevator. It was a memorial display for past staff members who had served the library. In the center was a smiling young woman with soft eyes and a name tag that read, Ellen Brooks, 1953 to 1972. Beneath it, in tiny letters, someone had written, "Forever in the Stacks." Michael stared at it for a long time. As he walked away, he could have sworn he heard a faint whisper echoing from behind him, gentle, familiar, and sad. "Don't forget me." 3. The Midnight Caller, the unsolved mystery at UCLA dorms. Back in the late fall of 2011, the residents of Sproul Hall, one of the older dorm buildings at UCLA, started whispering about something strange happening on the 5th floor. A series of phone calls that came exactly at midnight, always from the same blocked number and always ending the same way. Silence. It began with a sophomore named Lily Grant, a quiet journalism major who stayed up late most nights working on her laptop. The first time it happened, she thought it was just a prank. Her phone rang at 12 a.m. sharp. When she answered, she heard nothing but faint breathing. She said hello twice, then hung up, rolled her eyes, and went back to typing. But the next night it happened again. This time the call came at exactly the same time, and again no one spoke. Just that quiet, slow breathing on the other end, steady and deliberate, almost as if someone was listening rather than trying to scare her. After a few nights, it started to get under her skin. She began dreading the moment the clock hit midnight. She told her roommate, Jenna, who laughed it off and said, "Probably some bored freshman with your number. Block it." So she did, but that night her phone still rang. The number was hidden again, and the call came right on time. When she picked up, her hands trembling slightly, she heard something different, a faint whisper that sounded like a woman's voice saying, "Don't open the door." Then the call cut off. The next morning, Lily went to campus security and reported it. They took down her information but didn't take it too seriously. After all, prank calls weren't exactly uncommon in college dorms. Still, they told her to keep her door locked and call if anything else strange happened. For a few nights, everything was quiet. Then around 12 a.m. the following Friday, the phone rang again. This time, Jenna was awake too. "Put it on speaker," she said, determined to prove it was nothing. Lily hesitated but did as told. The line clicked and that same slow rhythmic breathing filled the room. Then after a pause, the voice came again, softer but clearer this time. "Don't open the door." Jenna frowned, whispering, "What door?" They hung up immediately and sat frozen, listening. That's when they heard it, a faint knock. 3 slow taps on their dorm door. Both girls stared at each other, neither moving. The knocks came again, louder this time. Lily grabbed her phone and called campus security, her voice shaking. Within minutes, 2 officers showed up. But when they opened the door, the hallway was empty. No one there, no footprints, nothing. After that night, both girls slept with the lights on. Word spread quickly around the dorms. Some students said they'd gotten similar calls, though most claimed it stopped after the 3rd night. But for Lily, it didn't stop. The calls kept coming, always at midnight, always with that same whisper. She changed her number twice, even switched phones, but somehow the calls found her. She tried ignoring them, but that only made the other things start. Objects shifting in her room, her desk chair turning slightly toward the door, her laptop screen lighting up by itself at odd hours. One night, Jenna woke up to find Lily standing at the door, her hand on the knob as if about to open it. Her eyes looked distant, like she was in a trance. "Lily," Jenna whispered, "what are you doing?" Lily blinked, stepped back, and murmured, "She's outside." That was the last straw. The next day, Jenna requested a transfer to another dorm, leaving Lily alone in room 512. The strange thing was, after Jenna moved out, the calls stopped. For almost 2 weeks, Lily didn't hear a thing. She started sleeping better, convincing herself it had all been stress or some elaborate prank. But one night, around the end of November, her phone rang again. Midnight. Unknown number. Heart pounding, she answered, whispering, "Who is this?" There was no breathing this time, no whisper, just static. And then, faintly through the crackling noise, she heard her own voice saying, "Don't open the door." The call ended abruptly, and before she could even process what had happened, there was a knock. Slow, heavy. The doorknob rattled once, then stopped. She sat frozen, staring at the door until the sun came up. The next morning, when her RA checked in after Lily missed class, the room was empty. Her belongings were still there, her phone on the desk, her laptop open, her wallet untouched. But Lily was gone. Campus police searched the building, checked security footage, even reviewed the entrance logs. Nothing. The cameras in the 5th floor hallway had malfunctioned that night, showing only static during the exact hours she went missing. Some students claimed they heard screaming around midnight. Others said they saw a shadowy figure near the stairwell, but no one could confirm anything. The university quietly told students it was a missing persons case, and within a few months, the story faded, at least officially. But those who lived on that floor swore the room stayed empty for a long time. Maintenance workers refused to clean it after several complained of hearing whispers through the door. In 2013, the university reassigned the room to a new student named Kelly, who didn't know the story. Her first week went fine, but one night she mentioned to her new roommate that she kept hearing a phone ringing at midnight. The roommate laughed until she realized neither of them had a landline. When they checked the desk drawers, they found an old dorm phone disconnected from the wall, but the call light was flashing. Kelly, thinking it was a wiring glitch, picked it up. The voice on the other end was faint but unmistakable. "Don't open the door." She dropped the phone immediately. When they called maintenance the next day, the worker who came up went pale when he saw the room number. "This phone's been dead for years," he muttered. "It shouldn't even have power." Rumors spread again. Some said the calls were part of an urban legend about a former student who vanished in the 1970s under similar circumstances. Someone who'd been found weeks later in a locked supply closet, her dorm phone clutched in her hand. Others whispered that Lily's spirit was still trying to warn whoever stayed in that room, reliving the same terrifying night over and over again. The university eventually renovated Sproul Hall, modernizing the rooms and removing the old phone lines altogether. But every now and then, a student studying late on the 5th floor claims their phone buzzes exactly at midnight, showing a single missed call from an unknown number. And if you ask any of the older staff or security guards, they'll tell you quietly, without meeting your eyes. If you ever stay in room 5,